I want y'all to see this. She's going to say some of the same things that she said, but what she's really going to get into is how Governor Houchal was able to bypass the legislature to get this passed, and how it all came to be that they started fighting for this this right to lock you up.
Defeated the Supreme Court. As you're going to hear, the governor and attorney general vowed that basically if they're reelected, they're going to push for quarantine camps in New York State. So we're going to find out, what does that mean for New York State? What does that mean for each individual New Yorker? And what does it potentially mean for all of America? With that, Bobby Ann Cox.
Thank you, Curtis. Yes, so I would like to first just let everybody know, this quarantine camp regulation, which the governor had created and pushed through the Department of Health, was completely unconstitutional, completely illegal. And so, excuse me, my background on how I got involved is just that, I'm an attorney here in New York for about 25 years now. And since COVID hit in March of 2020, I've been very on top of what's going on with the government and the various ways that they have been infringing on our constitutional rights in the name of, public health and safety. So yes, of course, everybody wants to be healthy. Everybody wants to be safe. Nobody wants to harm their neighbors. However, the government must act within the confines of the Constitution, even when it's an emergency.
Now, I know most of y'all don't even know what the Constitution says. You don't know what your rights are. You don't know nothing about the Bill of Rights. You don't know nothing about legislation. You don't know nothing about civics, nothing at all. But I suggest you learn, because these people got to go, and you have to pay attention what's going on, because you're just losing your rights day by day. We're just losing all of our rights. And it's not just in New York. They got some crazy laws out here in New Jersey too, regarding kids and stuff like that. So it's like, if people pay more attention to politicians and pay more attention to what is really going on and what bills are getting passed and stuff, so much shit is under the radar that we don't know that they pass every day. We have to pay better attention, y'all.
See, the United States Supreme Court has spoken on this topic multiple times, and they have ruled time and again that the Constitution is not suspended during a time of emergency. In fact, the Constitution is needed more than ever during a time of an emergency.
And see, a lot of people don't know that, and they voluntarily give up their rights like a dummy, and then that's how they get you.
Because during emergency is when the government, it's much more easy for the government to overreach, overstep, and infringe upon the rights of the United States citizens. Mm-hmm. So let's get into the quarantine camp regulation. It was 10 NYC.
So just keep in mind that this is from like after they won and they find out that they're going to appeal. So just know that everything that she's saying here is now the law.
RR 2.13. Governor Hochul issued this regulation through her Department of Health. What I mean by that is that they did not go through the legislature. In New York State, as on the federal level, the legislature is the lawmaking body. So here in New York, our New York State senators, together with our New York State Assembly members, that is our legislature. That is who is supposed to make law. What Kathy Hochul did was she made this regulation. It went through her Department of Health. They completely bypassed the legislature. There was no vote from the legislature on this. There was no vote by the citizens on this. So how did they get this? Well, it's about 7 years ago. Then Nick Perry, who was an assemblyman at the time, for 7 years, from 2015 through 2021, he was an assemblyman, and he kept proposing a bill which was very similar to this regulation. The bill was, in essence, giving the power to the governor and the Department of Health to lock up New Yorkers with just a suspicion that you were exposed to a communicable disease.
Now, this is the fierce part. Anybody could just call the Department of Health and say you got some shit, or they think that your family's contagious with something, or that they saw you and you're sick with something, or they overheard. And then that right there, all they need to have is like a reasonable reason to think you got something, and here they come.
No proof needed. And they could have locked you up in a facility, or they could have locked you down in your house. No time limits, so on and so on. That bill that was being proposed by Nick Perry for 7 years never became a law. It had no backing whatsoever in the New York.
That bill A4 16, you could go read it. That's what they're talking about. They've been trying to propose that for the longest time, and nobody will touch it. And they found a way to circumvent right around it.
New York State Assembly or in the New York State Senate. No other legislators in Albany would back that bill. So it failed completely. And ultimately, Assemblyman Perry withdrew that bill from consideration altogether. Now, what do we see? Kathy Hochul takes pretty much that same language, changes it a little bit.
Woo, child. Read that bill and just know that what she actually did is even worse.
And pushes it through the Department of Health as a regulation. So we see that we had something that was failing miserably in the New York State Assembly. The governor takes it, makes it a regulation, and now everybody is subject to this regulation. So what happened was, when I became aware of this, I said, okay, I'm going to sue the governor, try and strike this down. I knew that I had to have some standing with New York State legislators because that's who was being injured from the start with this. So Senator George Borrello, Assemblyman Chris Tague, and Assemblyman Mike Lawler agreed to come on the lawsuit together with a citizens group called Uniting New York State. And together we sued Kathy Hochul and her Department of Health, her Commissioner of Health, and the Health Planning Council. We filed the lawsuit in April, and almost immediately they removed the case to federal court. They tried to get it thrown out of state court. They pulled it up. We had to fight to get back into state court.
So look, they were trying to give this lawyer to run around. They were trying to, do everything they could to, throw her off, but, she stuck with it.
Which we won that argument. We were sent back to state court. Next thing you know, the governor and the attorney general.
But isn't that interesting? They tried to get it in federal court because they knew if they got it in federal court, it would just get shot down because, that's the cronies.
They take the case and they start fighting again about the amicus brief. We had a wonderful amicus brief that was written by another group of New York State legislators, Assemblyman Andy Goodell, Assemblyman Joseph Giglio, and Assemblyman Will Barkley. The amicus brief was in favor of our case, and it was brilliant. Of course, the attorney general and the governor tried to keep it out of court so that the judge wouldn't be allowed to read it. Ultimately, we had to go back and forth and fight motion practice, and we won that motion. The amicus brief was allowed into court. So in July, on the 8th of July, the judge ruled in our favor. He struck down the regulation. He said it's unconstitutional, it's illegal, you cannot do this. The governor does not have the power with her Department of Health to make this regulation. It conflicts not only with the Constitution, but it conflicts with existing New York State law.
Now, this is where the people in New York should be furious because you have people out there that are taking your rights away and they are just a dictatorship. And you should not just sit for that. And I feel that there's safety and power in numbers and people need to be aware. You need to share this. I really don't want no smoke. You know what I'm saying? But I have to say something because it's fucked up. People need to really pay attention and do something. I mean, I don't even know what you're going to do. I'm not really sure yet if they can go any further with this. I don't know what's going to happen. This is just unbelievable to me.
We already have law in New York. For 70 years, we've had this law. And it says what you do when you need to quarantine someone if they are a public health threat. The difference between that law that we've had for 70 years and this regulation was that the regulation had no due process protections. So according to the regulation, the Department of Health could lock you up or lock you down wherever they wanted. They could have done this to you in your home. They could have taken you from your home and put you into a facility of their choosing. They could have kept you there for however long they wanted, days, weeks, months. There was no restriction. They could have done this to you. They could have done this to your child, to your grandchild, to your elderly parent. There was no restriction on age. They could tell you what you could.
And I just have to let you know that this whole situation, it wasn't not one Republican involved in this. It's all the Republicans who want to fight to get rid of it. It was all Democrats. All of these horrible bills that I'm about to tell you about another one. All Democrats. Just remember that. So when you're all stuck on stupid, going to vote for these people, just remember you're voting against your own interest.
Could and couldn't do while you were in lockdown or in quarantine. So if you think about that language, it's really broad. They could have told you, sorry, no cell phone. They could have cut off your internet access. They could have told you what you could and couldn't eat.
To me, that's worse than going to prison, because at least if you go to prison, you're going to get a release date. I mean, this is like when you get locked up for like mental illness or something, and you stay in there until a doctor says you can go away. And then while you're in there, they just drug you half to death and give you whatever. You got to take whatever medicine they give you and stuff like that. It's crazy.
They could have told you what medications you could take or couldn't take or had to take. It was very broad language. And there was no provision in that regulation on how you got out of quarantine.
There you go. They make a law and make a regulation that doesn't say anywhere in there how the fuck you get out. You get out when they say you get out. Or like she said, Leticia James, oh, I guess you just got to go to court and sue. What kind of shit is that? You get up in there and there's really no way for you to get out?
Quarantine.
Child, y'all better stop playing with me. Please stop.
And I'll give an example of what that means. When we were having oral arguments in front of the judge asked the Attorney General's office, if you take a family and you put them into isolation, let's say you put them into a facility or a hospital, how do they get out? And the Attorney General's response was,
Leticia James.
I guess that they could hire a lawyer and sue.
Hire a lawyer. Who's going to hire a lawyer? Who has money to hire a lawyer? Especially after COVID and everybody's fucking broke, especially after strikes and everything's broke. They done crashed the economy. You got 9 million immigrants and stuff everywhere. Who has money to go get a lawyer and sue for something like this? And while you're in there, you have to have some people on the outside that's able to help you. What if you don't have that? And whatever lawyer they give you is going to be some, court appointed lawyer. Read that bill, because it explains, and I'm not really sure how the regulations that she has speak, but if you read the bill, you'll get an understanding of what they're talking about. Like, they could just leave you in there indefinitely. You could be in there for 3 months before anything is done. I know that bill said that. I know it said that. Your ass could be 3 months. What you in there for 3 months for illness? And then some of the illnesses that they have on there. Wait. I'm gonna stop. Let me see what else she gonna say, and I'm gonna show you this. This is insane.
So that's a clear example of how this regulation had no protections for the citizens.
None.
Our Constitution says that every law and regulations too need to have due process protections built into them, so that the government can't overreach and abuse their power.
Hello, the whole Constitution was written to protect people from the freaking government. Y'all better go talk to them patriots, and y'all better go listen to some independent media, and y'all better go listen to some Republicans and ask them some questions, because you can talk to them, because they ain't going to be foaming at the mouth and falling out and screaming and crying in your face like liberals do. Go read about it. Go see. And you're going to see. You will freaking see who protects the Constitution and your rights in America, and who doesn't, and who takes your rights away. Y'all gonna learn today.
Power and hurt the citizens. But this regulation, created by Kathy Hochul and her Department of Health, had no due process protections. It gave them complete totalitarian control over the citizens of New York whenever they wanted. It didn't even have to be an emergency for them to do this.
Now listen to that. It doesn't even have to be a public health emergency. They can just come for any reason and come for your ass and put you in there, and you could be in there for months before any due process or anything happens to you. And you have to sue to get out. It's a crazy, unbelievable. I cannot believe this is happening in America. America is dead. It's nothing that I remember of my youth. It's just like, it's like China. It's oh my God. It's just awful. I mean, our nation is not a place, at least it wasn't a place like this. You have to remember that Democrats take away the law, and want to dismantle the Constitution, because they are globalists and they want to come with a new world order and a new way of doing things. Can y'all please pay attention? That's what they do. Republicans, they want to be private citizens, minding their business, and keep the Constitution. Now, don't get me wrong. There's rhinos, and there are Republicans that are corrupted too, and they're also part of the globalist movement, and they're snuck in there. And there's really not that many people that are left in Congress and stuff like that that are not like part of this globalist agenda. But the ones that do, like the people in this video, if you